and usher us into better execution culture, especially if understood when people are young. The second threat is disunity of the elite and lack of a common overriding objective that makes us Uganda. Quite often, the foundational DNA of something tends to affect it in its old age. The Ugandan state, starting around 1900, was founded on religious bigotry. Captain Lugard, the British colonizing officer, took control of Mengo for Anglicans. He chased away the white Roman Catholic fathers to Woodoo so that he could create a distance between himself and a competing religion. He sent the Muslims, at the time they used to call them Mohammedans, he sent them to Butambala, and he took himself the prize of the city of Kampala that would emerge after 1907. Therefore, religion, not our relationship with God, has in the past 126 years been a factor in our organizing politically. In Ankole in the 1950s, we had a group called Kumanyana. The meaning of that Kumanyana is we should know each other. Largely that Kumanyana group was composed of one religious and cultural group opposing the status quo of the Nkore kingdom. And there was another one responding to that Kumanyana called Tukafachi. Tukafachi was composed of the elite in the area. The word Tukafachi meant that what have we done in this? And why bother us in this fight? We have no dog in the fight, as the Americans often like to say. These religions also reflected the political party formations in almost all areas of Uganda after 1954. It is the movement, the national resistance movement, during the Civil War in the 1980s that took a third front, that united many of these religions and tribes to face a common enemy. And the common enemy was insecurity and misgovernance. The last 40 years have made Uganda peaceful and one of the most welcoming countries with a high level of religious tolerance. This fabric of religious unity is somehow today fraying, as the last elections showed us. There's a return to the abuse of religion in politics, and people openly campaigning, holding the flags or standing behind the flags of their faith and the flags of their origin, as if these are barometers of how an area needs to be developed or how leaders should emerge. I want you to know that freedom does not always beget freedom. It sometimes breeds anarchy and a resurgence of what is in the foundational DNA. There were also groups inside the movement in the last elections, dressed up in military uniforms, beating up people, invading polling stations in some of the constituencies, shooting and dispersing voters, and then openly doing ballot stuffing. Some of these scenes were extremely disturbing for me to watch. Other people lined up others and paid them to vote for them. No independent choice at all from citizens, some of the citizens in our area. This is what happens when we undermine or when we lack a central uniting idea and we rely on material circumstances to decide our outcomes. Therefore, to heal, a nation must plan an escape hatch by working across different generations, different formations, different religions, ethnic groups, to keep a common front so that we can exercise restraint from the leaders of institutions and to run institutions on merit. I have seen, even in mature states and societies, a fallback to tribal cleavages when the economies run into trouble, or when entrenched groups face technological and financial pressures. But they work with pressure valves. In 1920, when the First World War led to the collapse of three empires, those of you who like history, the Ottoman, the Austro-Hungarian, Russia, parts of Western Europe, led by Britain and France, along with North America, those countries came together and started the Chatham House, or something called the Royal Institute of International Affairs. They based it in London. They also started a sister agency called Council on Foreign Relations, based in New York. I think the main idea for these institutions was to ensure that there are no more wars and to discuss leadership of international relations through research and understanding the global shifts. Both of these groups I mentioned, they combine people who work in government and they retire, and they also bring in private sector leaders of global corporate entities. For example, the oil companies of Chevron, ExxonMobil of America, the financial institutions like Citigroup, arms maker Northrop Grumman,